What if the secret to better sleep is already on your wrist? Apollo Neuro uses gentle, silent vibrations to help calm your body for sleep, so you can fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, and wake up actually feeling rested. This isn't just tracking sleep. Apollo Neuro helps your body regulate naturally. Try Apollo Neuro risk-free for 30 days at Apollo, APOLLO, Neuro, NEURO.com. That's Apollo Neuro at Apollo, APOLLO, Neuro, NEURO.com.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast, where we deep dive into the best matches in AEW history. Brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network and your host, Sam Brown. Hello and welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thank you for joining me. Today, we continue the fourth season of the Match Guide, where we will be looking beyond the ropes of Tony Khan's ring to the matches, wrestlers, promotions, and movements that influenced all elite wrestling. If you enjoy the show today, you can subscribe or rate it on your podcast app of choice, support the Social Suplex Podcast Network financially through Red Circle, and make sure you check out all of the other great shows on the network where we cover all aspects of the world of pro wrestling. We've got One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Tunnel Talk, the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast, Wrestle Art with Chris Things, and Imp's AEW Adventure, and Joshying Around. You can subscribe to our newsletter, the Social Suplex newsletter, at socialsuplex.com/newsletter. Become part of the Social Suplex community by joining our Discord, where you can chat with the hosts of all our podcasts, as well as other wrestling fans from around the world. Links for all of these things are in the podcast description. My guest for today is one of the members of the Never Mild, Always Wild group chat wrestling podcast, a man who goes by the name Ric Flair Andy, and appropriately, we're digging into Ric Flair versus Vader, career versus title match from the WCW World Heavyweight Championship at Starrcade 1993. It's the second of our back-to-back episodes discussing Ric Flair. Welcome to the show today, Andy. Great to have you here, mate.
Yeah, good to be back, mate. Looking forward to talk about this incredible storytelling match. It's phenomenal. One I always remember.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one I sort of, when I was discussing the idea for this season of the podcast with you, I said, were you watching things back in WCW? Because I know Tony Khan's always mentioned that he's very influenced by WCW, and you immediately, you sort of jumped on this match as a suggestion. You really like the idea of going back to early WCW. I'm curious, what made you choose this specific match when we were sort of going back and forth with ideas for things we could cover and matches we could look at?
Well, I was originally going to go with Terry Funk Flair because the feud's incredible. Anyone who hasn't seen it, go back and watch it. It's incredible. I was going to go with the Royal Rumble 92, but I didn't know whether that would whether that would qualify as a match to discuss, because it'd be very long. There's a hell of a lot to talk about in that. Or I was going to go with DDP Randy Savage, which is incredible. But the thing with this one in particular is I've banged on about this on the podcast for so long in comparisons to what I wanted AEW to do with certain wrestlers in terms of the Vader role and the eventual, just the pop and the way it worked for the face to overcome such adversity. So that's why I've gone with this match, and because it's Ric Flair, who, regardless of what he's done to tarnish his legacy and what he does daily to tarnish his legacy is still the greatest of all time for me.
Yeah, look, as we sort of did with the Shikara podcast, we do have to give a proviso up front, I guess, that we know all the things that Ric Flair did and some of the misdeeds that have happened, but at the same time, we will dive into the work that he did and discuss it as the work as it was presented at the time. It's a really, really cool time to talk about wrestling as well. Like you suggested the Terry Funk match, which would have been awesome as well. I love Terry Funk, and at some point we'll have to talk about him on the podcast. And Ric Flair's brief stint in WWE or WWF at the time in 1992, but early WCW, like 1992, 1993 WCW, before Hogan showed up, it's not something I was exposed to at the time. I was born in 1989. I didn't really start watching wrestling till the mid 2000s, but it's a period of wrestling that is so well loved. And when you look at matches like this one, and when you look at the roster that they had, it is a really cool time to be into this promotion. How much of this were you watching at the time?
I basically followed Ric Flair back to WCW from WWF. Like I was a WWF guy as a kid. I became a huge Ric Flair fan and followed Ric Flair back to WCW. And bizarrely, this is a strange way of getting into it, but the toy stores in the UK sold WCW figures, but it wasn't on TV as much as WWF was. And there was a lot of cool WCW figures. So I kind of just, went at it that way and started to find a lot of wrestlers I really liked, like your Arn Andersons, Sid Vicious. That's a funny one for this year, 93. Obviously Sting, everyone loved Sting, but nobody knew where Sting wrestled because everyone could see Sting in the toy stores and on the magazines, but WWF, nowhere to be seen. So I kind of went the opposite way of a lot of my friends and went more into WCW.
It's funny how that kind of works when you're a kid. Like you will almost become a fan of things because they've got cool toys. Or I remember there was an Australian fast bowler called Craig McDermott, and I got a poster of him before I'd really watched much cricket at all. But because I had a poster of Craig McDermott, I was like, I'm a Craig McDermott fan. We think of things like the toys. They're things that you buy when you're already a fan. Like, I'm a fan of wrestling. I like this wrestler. I'm going to buy their toy. But for lots of kids, it's like, this is a cool toy. I like this toy. Oh, this guy's a wrestler. Well, I guess I'll watch some wrestling then. It's like almost the reverse psychology there. But you look at this roster that they've got. You mentioned a couple of the names there, but I sort of line it up. It's a really great dynamic of like main eventers and vets, where you've got guys like who are so experienced in the ring and have like a lot of history to them and a lot of experience in being wrestlers on the road and being presented as stars on TV. Guys like Flair, of course, Sting, who, late 80s was when he sort of came through. You've got Ricky Steamboat, Rick Rude, Paul Orndorff, Vader. But then you've also got like this really great core of up-and-comers. You've got Cactus Jack, Dustin Rhodes, William Regal, Steve Regal at the time, Too Cold Scorpio, Ron Simmons, and, a young blonde guy called Steve Austin, who could be anything. And, Brian Pillman as well. Like it's such a cool roster you've got there. And, there's a lot of potential. You can just saying those names out loud, you can think, oh, wow, what's it going to look like when this person goes with this person, or this young guy, Cactus Jack and Sting, what's that going to look like as a feud, or Dustin Rhodes and Flair, what's that going to be? Given the history of Dusty Rhodes and Flair, it's just a very cool roster that they've got there in terms of how it's made up and the ways you can see it all fitting together.
Yeah, it's just a shame that Eric Bischoff had different ideas when because this was just when Eric Bischoff took the reins. Yeah, and he obviously wanted he was basically laser focused on one guy, wasn't he, for the company? So
yes,
a lot of incredible talent fell through the cracks, and it's a shame because it's a huge what if, isn't it? Really, especially with having Mick Foley and Steve Austin on that roster. And like, it's not as though they weren't pushed either. They were kind of pushed to a semi decent level. They weren't world title holders, but they did get a decent push.
They were treated as they sort of should be treated in the early 90s. They're like the up and coming crew that you're getting ready and you're building up so that when guys like Flair or ages out and retires, maybe in 20
Yeah,
years.
well,
Like you've got these guys ready to take
Good
the
luck, good luck.
mantle. But, they did, of course, put a cap over everything by employing Hogan and then all of Hogan's cronies and a bunch of really old immobile giants from the 80s to go up against Hogan in all through 1994 and 95 until the NWO came along. And then was that, that refreshment that probably should have come before.
It's a strange one because, like, would WCW have grown as much as it needed to without Hogan? Probably not. Not
point.
without the NWO, at least, anyway. But and would Steve Austin have become, Stone Cold Steve Austin in WCW at that time or in the following years? I don't think there's a chance in hell he would have, because maybe it's one of them periods of time where we look at a lot of wrestlers today in AEW who do that, and the same in WWE, where they just need some new scenery, new guys to wrestle with, and some fresh ideas. And it's a what if, isn't it? But it didn't happen, so
yeah,
whatever.
I can definitely see why people are so captured by this era of WCW in particular. Like going back and watching the various shows that were on at that time. Let's sort of zero in on Flair though, because the match we're talking about is at Starrcade, of course, and up to this point, Flair had main evented every single Starrcade until he left WCW, and then he missed 1991 and 92. He, of course, moved to the WWF at that time. What did you mentioned that you actually discovered Flair in the WWF, Andy? What did you think of Flair's time in the WWF?
Initially, I remember, because obviously it was the blurred belt thing and the real world champion. I was like, who the fuck's this guy? And as it kind of progressed, it was one of them where I was kind of getting to the age of, I was around 12, 13 at that time. So I was getting to the age of where the cartoon characters weren't doing it for me. And this heel guy who was an absolute scumbag, I was just fascinated by. Whether that's, I'm not sure whether that says anything more about me than it does about Ric Flair. But I just was captivated by the way he worked, really. And a lot of that was Bobby Heenan as well, to be fair. Bobby Heenan did a hell of a lot of work in introducing us all to Ric Flair and getting across just how big a deal he was, because I'd say for a lot of fans would not have realized just how big a deal Ric Flair was. This guy was, what was he? Was it 10-time champion by that point? He basically carried WCW for the best part of 10 years. And it was one of them situations where wrestling fans, I'd say probably more in America than anywhere else, but wrestling fans who were, more knowledgeable on wrestling at the time were just crying out for that Hogan Flair match. And so, Bobby Heenan trying to get across just how big this was. Like, you all think Hogan's the number one, the guy, the champ. This guy's the real world champion. He's got this big shiny belt that we can't show you because he's here illegally. And I was great. I was captivated by him, and everything he did in the WWF was incredible. It was so good. I was sad to see it end, which is why I ended up becoming more of a WCW fan, because I kind of followed Flair over to the other promotion. I think I made the right choice, because WWF was getting very cartoony at that point. Not that WCW was much better, but it was a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a certain kind of electricity for Flair showing up. Hogan, he's peaked by that point, and he's, his popularity is still huge, because Hogan's popularity was just huge, but it was on the decline nonetheless. And Vince has tried with guys like Warrior, and it maybe hasn't worked the way that he'd hoped. But then he starts looking elsewhere, and eventually he'll go to guys like Bret Hart, Yokozuna, ones like that. But in between it all, you've got Flair, and he just shows up, and there's a lot of electricity there, particularly when, you look at one of his earliest and probably his most famous WWF performance, that 92 Rumble, where he is just everything. And his performance is electric. And, I feel like when you see that promo of him at the end, where he's saying with a tear in his eye, I feel like his hair is standing on end from how much energy is just reverberating off him in that so promo. It's so good. But that, it ultimately, it kind of fizzles out. He doesn't quite fit in there the way that you hoped. You don't get that Hogan match the way that I guess so many fans would have wanted.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Doesn't work for me, brother.
I think they were wondering who was going to end up with their shoulders on the mat. Unfortunately, as is so often the case in wrestling, even to this day, unfortunately.
It's crazy actually when you think about the Flair turning up in WWF thing. Like today, what would be the closest comparison, do you think? So say if someone was to turn up in AEW, it'd be like Roman Reigns randomly turning up, I think. Not that he's anywhere close to Flair, but in terms of the name value, the top guy from the other company has turned up here randomly.
Yeah. And
huge.
maybe Cody Rhodes, the closest I guess we could possibly have maybe would be Cody Rhodes making the jump.
Probably. I think that's actually very close now thinking about it.
Given how, like the hit, Flair was very much like the heart of the WCW and Cody Rhodes, even though, it's not a direct comparison because he was never world champion in AEW even, but, an executive vice president, he was the face, the voice almost of AEW when it first started. I think the fact that's kind of the closest thing.
Yeah, I think the fact that we live in an age where we know everything that's going on. So we knew Cody Rhodes was going there. So it kind of lessened the impact a lot. So we'll never get that real surprise. We'll never get a Flair turn up in WWF. We'll never get a Lex Luger turn up on Nitro. We'll never get one of these because we'll know beforehand. Someone will drop it on Twitter and everyone will know.
We got a John Moxley turning up, and that was a shock to everyone.
I'll give you that. Actually, that's a good one. Yeah.
And I mean, like, I've actually talked to people who were on this podcast. I talked to people who were in the arena then, and one of them described it as like being inside a Monster Energy can. So if you could make it work, if someone could make it work, it is quite the thing to pull off. Quite the exciting thing. To get back to all this though, as we were talking about Flair, he returned to WCW in 1993, and you were telling me about an interesting thing. Actually, let's quickly sidebar into that. You were saying how he couldn't wrestle, but they put him on TV anyway, just in a chat show, and because he wasn't wrestling, they like sort of got around the contract or something.
Yeah, they had a segment called The Flair for the Gold, where Ric Flair would do a kind of like a Piper's Pick kind of thing, a little interview segment. And I didn't realize until recently, actually, when I was looking this up, the reason was because apparently he was still under WWF contract, and the contract's only specified you can't wrestle for another company.
Oh, so he was actually under contract. Oh my god,
yeah.
That's great.
So they were just making.
They're still paying him.
Yeah, Flair was probably getting paid twice. So that's good for his 7 ex-wives or whatever, isn't it?
Well, I mean, back then, I guess wrestlers didn't get paid the sort of guaranteed money they did today, but still good for him. Good for him. I mean, I'll never begrudge anyone taking Vince McMahon's money, so that's fantastic. Yeah, look, anyway, so yeah, as we were talking about Flair, he comes back. He actually wasn't originally meant to face Vader at Starrcade. It was meant to be Sid Vicious, but Vicious got in a fight with Arn Anderson backstage, I believe like threatening to stab him with some scissors or something, and he was fired as a result of that. And
he did actually stab him.
Oh, he genuinely stabbed him. Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
It was in the UK. They were on a WCW tour. Yeah. I think it was either Blackpool or Preston, Blackburn maybe. It's one of these places, kind of north, up northwest kind of place. But yeah, they were on a tour. Got into an argument at the bar. Apparently, they both had scissors, and Sid Vicious stabbed him. Oh, God. Which he got the boot, and Arn Anderson got suspended.
Yep, there you go. Well, I guess when you've got Flair sitting around and you need to fill a main event at Starrcade, who better to put in than the guy who did it so many times in the past? And then I guess to sort of juice that up, as a result, they then also add the stipulation of putting Flair's career on the line. So not only is it for the title, but if Flair loses, it will mean that he has to retire. And it's an interesting thing for them to put on the line because it's like Flair has just got back, but I guess if he's just got back, the question can be like, oh, does he still have it? This is a guy who, yes, he main evented every single Starrcade up until 1991, but now, we've now got this young roster. We've got guys like Vader who've come in and are tearing strips off everyone. We've got, Sting is now. He's now grown a couple of years. We've got young up and comers like Cactus Jack and Dustin Rhodes. Flair, do you still fit in this? Do you still have it enough to take back what you once held.
Yeah, it's interesting because Flair bizarrely, like, I'm not sure whether this was by accident or not, but when he came back to WCW, he was treated as a hero. I'm not sure whether it was kind of coming back from the enemy or what. So he was already a babyface. So they've been kind of they haven't been overly pushing him as a babyface, but he was a good guy. He wasn't doing any classic Ric Flair stuff. So that already added to the feeling and the emotion that the fans would have with this, because for a good 6 months before this, Flair had been a good guy. He'd been, he'd not been doing any of his typical Ric Flair, fucking sting over stuff that he usually would do once a week. So like for him to step in, I'm as well, this was at a point when Vader had been dominating WCW for a good 7 months or so. I think he destroyed everybody, and this was it felt like this was just one step too far for Ric Flair at the time, and they really pushed into this. They lent into it as much as they could with this retirement angle. I think I mentioned to you just before we started recording that, like, back then retirements, we thought they were real. There was a real chance that somebody would lose the match and retire. Not like today. I always go back to the Macho Man one when he did retire for a short period anyway. So that's, this was a real situation of, God, has he come back just to say his goodbyes? And, is this going to be it now? Is he going to maybe retire to the commentary desk or become a manager? So the emotion that they managed to build up from Ric Flair, of all people, was incredible.
It does give the match a very different feel to if it was Sid Vicious in there, because if Sid Vicious in there, it's really like a collision of these two giants. Like these I wouldn't call Vader an uber athlete, so to speak, but like he's a huge dominating force. And then it's like, well, what happens when the immovable object gets met with an irresistible force? That's kind of the Sid Vicious and Vader match. Whereas this is much more like, this is Flair. It's the returning legend, a guy who's potentially aged. He's at the end of his best years. Has he still got it? Is there enough heart and emotion left in him to do it? And it's far more compelling, I think, for your biggest program of the year as well, your biggest show of the year. So I think it was a fortuitous, and particularly the performance that Flair gives in this match, as we'll get into, is amazing. Like, it was a fortuitous sort of change around that they sort of stumbled their way into, that they ended up with this match rather than the Sid Vicious and Vader match. Let's quickly talk about Vader. Like, this is a guy, like, I feel like this is almost him at the peak of his powers. Just, he's, off this incredible match with Mick Foley where they're just like brutalizing each other. And he is such a perfect opponent for Flair in this guise. Like, this just like completely indomitable force.
He is. It felt a lot like it was very Rocky IV. You got this kind of aging champion that everyone loves, and this new guy who seems indestructible, and he's just absolutely murdering everybody in his path. Like, Vader looked like you just couldn't take him down, and it gave a genuine kind of feeling of like what? How can Flair beat this guy? Like, and that's a lot of that probably is because at the time I probably thought wrestling was real. I say real, wasn't predetermined, but yeah, regardless, the story, the way they played into the storyline for this, you really felt like Vader was going to murder the guy, and like you said there, that coming off the back of some incredible Vader matches where he absolutely destroyed people. I think Sting beat him once, but then he beat Sting, pretty short, quite soon afterwards. He beat him and won the belt back. And then there was nobody who seemed to be able to step up to the plate. I think you're right in that this was the best outcome for everybody, really, for Starrcade. I mean, it's far more compelling than Sid Vicious against him. So everybody apart from Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson were probably better off with this match.
Well, conspiracy corner here. Arn Anderson and Ric Flair, pretty good friends, Was there a word in the ear?
Well, I'll take a scissors for you.
Yeah, I'll take some scissors.
Scissor me, Sid.
Yeah. I suspect Arn Anderson didn't think Sid Vicious had the guts to do it or something.
I think I read they both had scissors and they were just going at each other, like obviously late in a bar somewhere, and Sid had, Sid was the one who got away.
Look, there's probably a few different versions of the story out there if you want to like dive into the shoot interviews, including a number of ones for people who weren't there that say they're there and they were there. People who've heard from someone who've heard from someone who've heard from someone. So,
Just glad Alan Anderson didn't have his gun.
Yeah, he didn't have his Glock with him. Good. Oh, there's one last thing I wanted to mention. Flair cuts like this awesome promo a few weeks out from it. I can't remember if I sent this to you or not, but you know, he talks about how how he walked out of the plane crash from 75 that left a wrestler paralyzed. How like he's wrestled Super Bowl after Super Bowl in packed stadiums so many times over, and so he knows how to get it done. There's just like so much passion and fire coming from him in this match, and you know he's clearly like just so wound up for it and so up for it emotionally, and yeah, just with the emotion that's within him heading into this match.
Yeah, his promos were incredible. Anyway, I always thought, but his promos for this short period as a babyface. It was completely different. His delivery was a lot calmer, a lot kind of more serious, and it worked as well. It just added to every little bit of this kind of period that we talk about. Added to the pay-per-view. Yeah, his promos where he would look straight in the camera and he would speak slowly, and he would. None of this kind of losing his shit, giving a couple of woos, elbow dropping his jacket. There was none of that stuff. It was slow, calm. This is the situation we're in.
It feels very real, and it feels like a culmination of his career. Like even him going back to the plane crash in 75 and then talking about the other Starrcades and these big shows that he is, and talking about his former opponents. Like he name checks Dusty Rhodes, he name checks Sting, he name checks Kerry Von Erich, and you know he's making this feel like a culmination of his career, which you know, given its retirement match, is very fitting and sort of adds to the gravity. And you know, let's get into the match itself, because you know, in the lead or the broadcast for the match itself, because in the lead up you get just more and more of this, but. As we always do here on the AEW Match Guide, we'll give the match its flowers. So Dave Meltzer, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, he rated it 4.5 stars, and Cage Match currently has it rated at 8.65. So on Cage Match, it is the highest ranked American match for 1993, and it's the second highest ranked American match for 1993 by Dave Meltzer, behind that Cactus Jack and Vader match that I mentioned earlier on. The broadcast like kicks off with a really incredible video package that's kind of puts pictures to the Flair promo that I talked about, and how Flair's talking about how, you know, this is a plane crash that destroyed the career of another wrestler who was paralyzed, but Flair was able to walk out of it. But then it, you know, smash cuts then after Flair's just said that to Vader in the ring, destroying guys like Sting, like Cactus Jack. And then we get to open the broadcast, we get Vader arriving at the arena, walking in with Harley Race, and it then sort of transitions to him working out in the ring as well, doing some just warming up. And then we get to Flair's house, and Flair's in his house with his family, including a young Charlotte Flair in there, if you're looking, and they're farewelling him, and he's going to ride to the arena with Gene Okerlund. And then throughout the broadcast, you know, the matches are happening and they cut to Flair traveling to the arena. And each time they do it, they've got this interview that's ongoing with Gene Okerlund, discussing how he's feeling, how he's, you know, what he's thinking about going into this match. It's very subdued, very emotional, but it just builds up the gravity of this match so well.
It's incredible. I think I said to you earlier, I'll say the same now. Me and Gene deserves all the awards for this, because it's phenomenal. Like, he's not just doing his usual Me and Gene announcing shtick. He's like a full-on sports documentary. You know, it's like he's part of a historical sports documentary, the way he plays it. It's incredible. It's so good. And the tension in the car as they go in, and Me and Gene keeps, look, you know, Rick, this could be the end. Are you happy for it? Are you prepared if this is the end? And then he's actually touching his hand as he says this. I think it's the second or third segment when Flair's like, look, let's just talk about something happy. I don't want to dwell on this. It's so well done. It's one of them things that just gives you chills thinking about it. That it's peak presentation for me. It's actually very similar. This whole thing. It reminded me looking back on it of what AEW did with the Derby stuff a couple of weeks back or a month ago, or whatever, in terms of making it feel big because the entire show is based around this one moment. You're clearly telling the audience this match. Look, we've got some good matches on here, but this match is what you're paying for. This is all you want. And they really kind of get that across with the fact that, like, even in the matches, you still have Tony Schiavone and Jesse Ventura talking about the match, talking about the Flair match in other matches. And then in between the matches, they always come back to them and like, look, could this be the end? And, Jesse Ventura's doing his best Nigel McGuinness impression. And Tony Schiavone is the hopeful Ric Flair fan who hopes he can do it for the good of the company, but he's not quite sure. It's incredible. It is. It's peak presentation.
Yeah, that's actually something I noted down as well. Like this makes the entire broadcast so much about that main event, and it's something that older wrestling did a lot more. Like this is a very good example of it, particularly the tone it sets, and how prominent it is. It's very, very prominent. But, having commentators talk significantly while action is going on in the ring in the preliminary matches about what's going to happen in the main event was very common back then. It's not so much anymore. You might get the odd line, but typically they will focus on that. And the preliminary matches are given a lot more weight than what they were given now. But there is something, and that's good because, like, I think we get invested in these, like, mid-card and preliminary matches, and it gives them a lot more showcase because there's more focus put on them by the broadcast. Like the broadcast is saying this is important. Whereas when the broadcasters are talking about what's going to happen in the main event while something else is happening in the ring, they're saying, oh, well, what's happening in the ring right now isn't really that important. What's really important is what's coming up. But that's a double-edged sword, right? Because it really is cool to have something that is built up so much throughout the night and is just so clearly this massive focus. And I was trying to think about, because you're right that AEW has done some dynamites like that, and the Darby Allin beating MJF one is a fantastic example. But I was trying to think of like a pay-per-view where AEW has done that, and I don't think they ever really have. The closest I think they would have come would actually have been Double or Nothing this year, where they had that MJF segment with Mick Foley early on, and then Mick Foley and Darby Allin as part of that segment. And then there's also some of the other ones that involve MJF where he was with Adam Cole, and, like when they were the Brochachos and they were doing the tag team as well as he would be the champion in the main event. And probably, and this is a bad comparison because it ended up being a disaster, but what happened at Full Gear in 2023, where they sort of really based the whole show around the angle, I guess, that would be happening in the main event with Jay White and MJF and Adam Cole.
Yeah, and also another one I'll give you that was similar was, I can't remember the pay-per-view now, but basically the one when Punk lost his shit, because it was building towards the whole, Stokely's faction and MJF right at the end.
Good point.
Yeah, because we had these masked men throughout, and then it's after we'd had a good couple of weeks of Stokely hiring him as well, and then it turned out it was MJF behind it all, only for it to be thrown away because CM Punk's a crybaby.
Yeah, that's a good example of it until everything that happened after the main event.
Yeah. It's like, what a waste of time. But it does. It gives it such a feeling of importance. And like I'm one who wasn't really seeing the need for a Derby title win, and I wasn't really keen on it. But they made it work because of the presentation for me. They made sure they made it feel big. I'd like to see more of that. No, that's just going to say I'd like to see more of that with AEW. To be honest, another
one where they did it well. Just because, so I'm not just pointing out ones where it's MJF. Another one where they did it well was, I think, All In last year, where you had, the Ops involved with the Death Riders in the preliminaries, and then you had the Swerve and Will Ospreay connection and their tag match with the Young Bucks, and then of course that the main event, which was Hangman versus John Moxley for the AEW title. That's less less and less like what we're talking about, where they're, constantly cutting to little interview segments with Ric Flair. But I'm just thinking about wrestling events that were built kind of very much around one story, which all of those different parts of the show were stemming off this Death Riders story and the dethroning of the Death Riders story, and bouncing off that. So very effective how they do it throughout in terms of building up the gravitas for this match between Flair and Vader. And as you said, like building up the idea that this could be the end of Ric Flair's career, and they're treating it like it is, particularly Okerlund and the seriousness that he's dealing with this.
It is, and like I'll just say that if anyone's listening to this who hasn't seen it, don't just go and watch the match. Like, you have to watch the entire thing. If you're going to skip through some things, you can skip through some of the actual, the lower matches, but you have to see the segments in between, because the presentation, the way they built it up. I mean, we didn't even talk about Vader at the start. Vader turning up early. He's turned up 6 hours or 4 hours early.
Yep, in his Rivera jacket.
Doing his drills with Harley Race. Like, it's Rocky IV stuff, and Flair's just kind of taking the time with his family, because obviously he's a man who cares about his family. We all know that in real life, or not. And it sets the emotion, sets the stakes, and it's a great feeling by the end of it.
Yeah. Oh, you've got me. You got me with that one. You got me with that one there. And look, this is free on YouTube as well, I should say. I'll actually put a clip in the. It'll go in the Discord. Actually, I'll put in the days leading up to this. I'll have put this in the Discord. I'll put the whole show in the Discord in the AEW Match Guide thread. So if you want to see it, you can find it in there, and you can watch all these little segments and then the match itself, which we will get to now. So Vader comes out first, and I have to say, looking at him, he always looks intimidating, because it's freaking Vader. He's like this bowling ball of a man who's just got so much I don't want to say he gets like he is able to be intimidating in such a good way that works so well for the presentation of his character. But I will say, I prefer him coming out in Japan with a big mammoth helmet and steam coming all out of it and everything. They're missing that. They're missing that one little ingredient. But it is also fitting, of course, that we've mentioned Harley Race's involvement as well, who's managing Vader. And it's very fitting that he is out there, given that Vader is facing Ric Flair, and that Flair actually faced Harley Race for the NWA title at Starrcade, at the first Starrcade in 1983. So there's a nice nod to history there with Harley Race being involved in this match.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of things, but like they play off each other as well, with Harley Race constantly shouting at Flair, "You asked for this. You asked for this. You said you wanted this."
Yeah,
it's great.
And we're just going to keep repeating it. Flair comes out. He's looking really serious, like very serious in this. He's really got his game face on. Beautiful sequined robe, as always the case with Ric Flair. But, just to add to the gravitas again, they've got Michael Buffer announcing. Of course, for some wrestling events, Michael Buffer is a bit on the nose, and you can see he's treating it a bit like a lark. But I also think having Michael Buffer, this guy who called, he announced for these really famous boxing matches for these absolute titans of world sport, having him there, it is a cool thing, and it does give a huge fight feel. And in this one, he plays it straight. Like, he announces them really straight out, full Michael Buffer, and of course you get the "let's get ready to rumble." I like having him here.
It's great, and it does give it the big fight feel. It really does. It makes it feel special. There's a lot of little things that we've spoken about with this match that just add to the overall feel of it. And Michael Buffer definitely is. I miss Michael Buffer doing wrestling matches. He used to do a lot of, I think he did all the Nitro ones actually, but
he kind of went a bit off the deep end though with some of the way that he'd do the announcing, and definitely didn't treat it as seriously as he's treating this one.
No, this one he's treating like it's like Muhammad Ali, George Foreman or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
And, the success of everything that we've talked about is so evident in the way that this starts. This crowd is so hot for Flair, and it's in his hometown as well. Sorry, I don't think I've mentioned that yet. This is in Charlotte. Like, this is in Flair's hometown. Yeah, which of course plays into it as well. But
yeah, that's the whole reason he's driving from his
his
house with his family and everything. Yeah, and that's the reason they're driving in the limousine, which they didn't wear seatbelts on, by the way, I noticed, which is a disgrace. But we know Ric Flair's got a checkered past, so that's another thing to add to no seatbelts.
I wonder if they were really this is a good question. I didn't even think about this till now. I wonder if they actually were driving when that happened, or if they were just stationary in a car. And because I can't remember if you see things going past or not. Like,
yeah, he's definitely driving because they've got the well, they could just be good camera, but they had the police, the security.
Of course, yep.
Giving them paving the way for them, but they probably pre-recorded it the day earlier or something. They just to be safe. I mean, what, there's a traffic jam or something.
Yeah, imagine if you really got shot. Like, sorry, folks. Anyway, yeah, of course, as we were saying, the crowd is hot as anything. But Flair, they lock up, and Flair is immediately shoved to the ground. And Tony and Schiavone and Jesse Ventura sum it up perfectly. They say he's not going to be able to match Vader face to face. He's going to have to outsmart and outmaneuver Vader. But one thing that I loved looking at this opening stage is Flair's game face, man. The eyes are just so zeroed in on Vader the whole time. He just has such a good game face, and it's something I've noticed in so many of his matches. The way that he just his eyes bore into his opponent and he focuses on them with such intensity. It really lends to the authenticity of the contest. It gives off the vibes of this is an athlete who is locked in on the performance that he needs to give.
It does. I think a lot of this is down to the fact that Ric Flair has always believed he is actually Ric Flair.
Yeah.
He believes it's I genuinely think he thinks everything around it is real. Because he played the character for life. He thinks he is Ric Flair, and I feel like he obviously he will have known he was going to win, but I feel like he feels the emotion as much as everybody else in this point because he's Ric Flair. He's in Charlotte. This is huge. He's desperate. Everything hurts. He's old. He's got this last chance to prove it to himself that he's still the man, or is he done? It's great.
Yeah, but the man he is up against is Vader, and it's a slow pace early because Vader is just unloading on Flair. He lands some strikes and then he struts, and then he does a military press and then he struts again, and then he tosses Flair about and he struts some more. He's just so strong that whenever Flair gets some offense, all Flair can do is just fire up and unload with chops and punches, but really doesn't do much to Vader. He just walks through it every time. Vader's offense, it just looks so rough, and he just looks so intimidating in all his body language. Just the way he holds himself is so intimidating.
He is. He's an absolute monster. He's just toying with Flair at that point early in the match. It's Flair. A couple of the classic Flair signature spots are in there as well. With when Vader throwing him around, he does the old roll and pop back up on his back. It's sat in the corner with this look of fuck. What am I gonna do here?
And it's
he gets back up and goes again. Sorry.
Yeah. But with Vader, there's such an arrogance there, and there's so much ego. And he's enjoying doing this as well. He kind of has a smirk on his face at times, and he's enjoying flexing his muscles and unloading on Flair. It's sadistic as well as egotistical and just overpowering. And Flair's selling, of course, like Ric Flair is a great seller. More news at 5.
It's another one of the things that just played into it. Although like Vader treated Flair, and Harley Race was great for this as well, for this build. They treated him as a nothing opponent. Like, look, man, you're old, you're washed up, you don't want this. This is going to be easy work, and like it added more to it. It did. I know I keep saying that this thing's added to it, but they did. There's a lot of things that maybe if you took one or two of these aspects away, it probably wouldn't have hit as much. And yeah, his selling is always good. It always has been. Whether it's him, tossing himself backwards onto his neck, looking like he's just snapped it again, or whether it's his overly loud shrieks when he gets hit. It's like, so you can hear it in the back row. Yeah, great.
He doesn't like Flair's selling. He doesn't have the explosivity that we see today, with like an Omega or an Osprey, how they just like their body just explodes when they sell and take a bump. But the way he flops, Ric Flair like flops around, is just so iconic. And I like flop sounds bad, but it's I mean it in a good way. It's so dramatic. The way that he just kind of, his body just folds in on itself or flops over the top of the rope. And one of the earliest wrestlers I watched a lot of was Shawn Michaels. And you can just so easily see where Shawn Michaels stole every single one of it from. It's just like so clearly Ric Flair and the way that he sells. But as well as the really obvious stuff and the stuff that is just iconically Flair, like you think the face drop. Or the flipping over the turnbuckle, the way that Ric Flair takes strikes, and with Vader, it's particularly pronounced because Vader's strikes look so rough when he gets them in the corner and he like paws at them. But the way that Flair takes strikes is so good. Like the way he shakes and gets hit, and like his hair adds to it as well because his hair is kind of so white and so it stands out so much. But the way that he moves his body when he gets hit and takes strikes is so good as well.
It's also when he throws strikes as well. Flair, one of the things that I don't hear enough people talk about was his striking ability. Like his punches look fantastic. And when he eventually does start to throw a few at Vader, and they're not phasing Vader at this point, but they look like solid punches that are connecting. And I always remember in a documentary somewhere when Flair was talking about how he got his punches so good, and he would say he would hang a piece of paper from a door frame with like a peg or something, I'm not sure, but he said he'd hang it from a door frame and he would punch it, and his whole aim was to not, basically to not touch the paper, but to get it, to feel the touch of the paper, but not actually make it move. And that's why this is, again, this could be bullshit, but this is why he himself says that, like, whenever he's in the ring, like with people, they always, they would always comment on how good his punches were because he would dig them without actually digging them, and it looked real. And it looked the same in this Vader match. He was throwing some digs that looked like they were connecting with Vader fully. None of this side of the head stuff. These were full on in the middle of the face. And clearly they weren't connecting, because otherwise Vader probably would have lost his shit and broke Flair's back for real.
Well, Vader's I'm giving Flair a lot of props for his selling of these punches, but Vader is very well known for just whacking people anyway. So it could be that as well. But, like the way Flair sells gives impact is the word that I was trying to say, with the way that he takes the strikes. And, this is a very traditional big man structured match in terms of it takes 10 minutes for Vader to take a bump on his back. It comes after 3 top rope axe handles, which is just like classic big man wrestling. Flair is throwing punches. All he can do is throw punches and strikes. And he finally gets a bit of offense in, and it still takes so much just to get him down.
It's amazing. The fact that he managed to hit the top rope axe handle, because as we were saying earlier, like this classic heel Flair doesn't even make one. He gets onto the top ropes and somebody's already waiting there to lift him up, slam him down every time. But the fact that he hits one is great. I remember actually seeing I can't remember what match it was, but Jericho did this once in a match. It must have been in the last 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, whatever. Anyway, he did one in AEW where the same thing. He was in his face mode, and he went up to hit one, and he actually made it. And you could see the crowd like, oh, what are we doing? Usually this doesn't happen. But no, Flair hit 3 of them. and Vader still wasn't really. He was a little bit wobbly, but he wasn't moving yet.
Mm. And, you know, when Flair actually does get Vader down, the crowd just goes mental. And at this point, Flair's like sort of bleeding from the mouth as well. And when he then also goes for, you know, like the classic rolling knee, and the crowd goes just bonkers at this point, because that's, well, I say the classic Flair rolling knee. Most people who are listening to this can picture that in their minds straight away, pretty much. And then, you know, they go to the outside a little bit. Flair pulls Vader over when he's got him down, like smashes his knee against the ring ropes, and then gets a chair and smashes it against that. And the crowd don't care that, you know, Flair's got a chair, because, you know, it's Flair and it's a chair and it's against Vader. Like, you use anything to get it.
It's great because he in this match, he does a lot of the things he would usually do as a heel.
Yeah.
But the crowd are just really sympathetic to him, and they're like, no, we don't care. Do it. Go for it. Rake to the eyes. That's fine. Go for it. Low blow. Just go, Flair. Do whatever you want.
Well, you look at what he's against, and his career's on the line. Like, of course he's going to need to do these things. And at one point, Vader's mask just comes off as well. But it doesn't matter. Like, Vader doesn't care, because, I don't know, he's just going to keep wrestling. But, it just shows, like, in the tussle of this match, things are just flying everywhere. And then, Flair finally, like, gets to do some of the classic Flair spots, like slams him on the leg. He does a slow strut, and he tries to put on the figure four. But Vader just like shoves him off at that point. And then he goes for the Vader bomb. He misses. Flair then actually gets the figure four on, but Vader makes it to the ropes. The thing that like stands out to me is just how physical this is. And I really love in this version of Flair, like so much of when I was exposed to Flair first was like late WCW and WWF, where he'd really sort of become a parody of himself. And those moves were just like, the elbow drop, the rolling knee, the figure four, particularly the strut. It's like, it's so overdone, so corny. But in this, it just like feels so organic and feels very genuine, and it almost fits the timbre of the match. Even when he does like the woo, it feels natural in the moment, rather than like, as I said, like where he's, almost playing a version of who Ric Flair is in sort of the latter parts of his career, where he's unloading the woo every time he lands a chop.
I'm just smiling here because I'm in total agreement with what you said there. It's a completely different Flair. He's not like he did bring out the hits, but not in the comical, predictable way that he did in some of his matches as a heel. Like you say, in that 92, 93, 91, 92 period. Everything's just a little bit more understated in this until it gets to the point where he starts to give across this desperation. And when you slowly start to feel that maybe there's a chance, like, because when Vader gets to the ropes in the figure four, that's a point where you think, and as a kid, I vaguely remember thinking, oh, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. No, he's done.
Yep, he had him in the figure four. That was the chance, and now he's escaped it.
Because that's the way the script would usually go. Back then, I mean, like we had someone recently, I can't remember who it was, someone moaning about too many finishes. Back then, we didn't get many finishes at all. You usually got a finisher, and if they got out of it by some way, the next one was the winner. Whether it was a finisher, or if someone didn't hit their finisher and didn't get the pin, the other guy was going to come back. Like, it was quite predictable at that point. So at this point, when he gets out of the figure four, that's when I would have started to think, oh God, no, this is it now.
Well, and it looks to be going that way, because after that it hits the final stretches. After that figure four, Vader he downs Flair with just like more brutal strikes. He even like has Flair on the ground, and he's like unloading elbows on him, and then climbs up to the top rope for the moonsault. And if he hits that, there's zero chance that Flair gets up. But Flair manages to dodge, and then Flair gets on the cover because Vader's hurt from missing the moonsault. Vader pushes him off at two, But in like this moment of divine timing and hubris from Vader's side of things, in the background, Harley Race, he's dove off the top turnbuckle to try and break up the pin, which Vader had under control. But I guess Harley Race lost confidence in him or something. But Harley Race dives off and ends up hitting the flying headbutt on Vader instead of Flair. Vader like sort of stumbles, gets up, the wrestlers collide, which knocks Flair over. But in that moment, Flair picks Vader's leg, pulls him down, puts all of his weight on top, and manages to pin him down for 1, 2, 3. He gets the win with a technical pin, becomes 11-time world champion. His career is saved. What do you think of the ending sequence there, Andy?
I really enjoyed it. Didn't see it. It was like, it wasn't too clean. It felt like someone who got lucky, which is what it needed to be, because it protected Vader at that point as well. Both guys came out better off. Yeah, it's a good finish. I mean, Vader's rocking on his feet, he's back and forth, and the way Flair does grab the leg, it's kind of almost from behind, like he's going to try and pick the leg up. It looks initially like he's going to try and pick the leg up to either go for another figure four or just to try and do some more damage, because a constant theme throughout the latter part of the match was Flair trying to work the leg for his preparation for his finisher. But instead he grabs it, and as Vader takes a big tumble there as well in that. And as he takes it, he kind of almost like rolls over onto him with his full weight, gets the pin, and it's a quick one. Everyone's happy, and it's great finish. Protects Vader. Flair's a new champ.
Yep. And the thing I love about this is, at the start, what did Tony Schiavone and Jesse Ventura say? They said Flair would have to outsmart Vader, and that's exactly what he does in this moment. He outsmarts him by picking the leg and getting that technical pin. And it's something that I wish like modern wrestling would do better with treating roll up or flash pins not as a fluke, but as, oh, this is actually someone using their technical knowledge and using their in-ring smarts to surprise their opponent and get the win, but in a way that is actually technically satisfying and a show of their skill and their craft as a wrestler. And they're, in particular in this one, like, this is a guy who's been presented as a veteran who has so much experience. Like, this is him using every ounce of his experience to get out of this really tough match with an overwhelming opponent, with something that is him showing his smarts.
To be fair, I think, I agree with you that we should see more of this from more experienced wrestlers. But this is something that, like, funnily enough, that like the person I really wanted AEW to push this kind of story with was Megan Bayne, because I wanted to see this, and I wanted to see her absolutely destroy everybody. And then just because whoever got the win over whether it was going to be a return in Tony or Willow, whoever was going to be made, because that moment, just to recreate that moment that Flair had was phenomenal. But I didn't realize until thinking back now that, like, when Tony did beat her in that match they did have, it was a small package, wasn't it? So it was very similar in terms of using like Megan Bayne was the stronger woman on paper who had been demolishing everybody. And Tony actually won with the small package, which is a very similar finish.
And at the time, they were actually doing that. So maybe I should take that back. But I guess I see these, because she won a number of matches. She won a number of matches with a small package, because the match I saw in Grand Slam in Australia, where she won the title back from... what's her name? Oh my gosh, I'm not. I promise
she's
isn't even a
Doesn't
bit.
Matter. She died a few years
This
ago.
isn't even a bit. I've forgotten her name. She won with a small package. And she'd won other matches in the lead up to that with a small package as well, when she was doing that, like, oh, I forget I'm a rookie sort of deal. Yeah, but I feel like too often the distraction roll up is when that kind of finish is most often employed.
Yeah.
Someone's music plays or something happens and there's a distraction, and then the other wrestler doesn't even celebrate in the ring. They like run out of the ring like they have, don't beat me up. I didn't just win this match. It was a complete fluke. So I'm going to run away and look like I've gotten away with something. When in actual fact, it's like, no, you won. You were a better wrestler, because that's the point of this thing, is to be a better wrestler. And that's what you were in that moment. But you're right, it does protect Vader as well. And these two would go on to have further matches. And like after the match, we get an interview with Vader, and he's pissed off, he's angry, he's not happy. And you know, the ending with having Harley Races sort of involved in it as well plays into that as well, and helps Vader keep Vader strong and keep Vader looking intimidating, and keeps alive like future matches between Flair and Vader, because it's like, well, there's further questions that we can answer here, even though Flair was better in this night. And go on, you sound like you're about to say something.
No, I was just going to agree with you and just say it's a shame what happened with Vader in terms of how they, you know, when he jumped ship and the WWE treated him as an afterthought, really, rather than the actual monster he was, because the guy was phenomenal at that point in his career. Whether it was his Japan stuff or his WCW stuff, he was genuinely scary. And and for a guy that size, he couldn't half move as well.
Oh yeah, he was quick when he wanted to be, very quick.
Whilst protecting him and thinking of what we're going to do in the future, it's actually just a shame to think about the fact that, like, you know, 6 months later they'd already made plans to move on to the other fella and didn't give two fucks about Vader anymore.
Yep. After the interview I mentioned with Vader, they go to Flair's locker room, and I like this ending because it's Flair in there with his family, and then you also get Sting and Ricky Steamboat coming in, so like two rivals of Ric Flair, you know, who Flair has done horrible things to and would do in future horrible things to, but in this moment they're happy for him, and it really puts him over as like the, you know, the face, the veteran face who's got these friends in the locker room who are good people that we like, and they're, you know, putting him over with promos as well, which is, you know, a really nice way to end this, given the seriousness and the somberness even at the start when Flair's staring down the barrel of his career potentially ending.
It is. It's such a good feel good ending to the show. Everybody seems happy for him. Like, whether it's me and Gene, Tony Schiavone seems relieved as well. And I think the only one who's not happy is Jesse Ventura.
And it's such a, like, when I'm looking at this match, it's like such a great confluence of Flair at the peak of his abilities as a babyface. You know, he's 44, so he's like right at the end of where his body is, like still in really great condition. And I will say he is in really good condition here in this match. He's at the point where it's like the last gasps of the peak of his physicality, but he's also got like the wrestling smarts to pull this off and just look like, just have the crowd so behind him. And, you know, he barely uses any moves. His moves are like, for the first 12 minutes of this match, it's a 13-minute match, he might only do chops and punches and like a couple of very, you know, attempting to grapple Vader. It's such a minimalistic performance, but he gets so much out of it.
Yeah, it is. It's very too. They didn't do too much. They did just enough to get the match through and to get across the story that needed to be told. Too much probably would have killed it, I think. So it was just right. It's great. Like, everything played out perfectly. When I was rewatching it again last week, it's one of them that still holds up, even though wrestling's changed so much. It just still holds up as an incredible piece of storytelling.
Yeah, and you know what? I had the same thought, and I immediately, because this is a podcast where I, you know, reflect on AEW and the influence and things like that. This is a match. It is a great match, but it's a match you would just never see in AEW. Like, it's so one-sided. Flair's offense is so minimalistic. It's just not something you would ever see in the way that wrestling is presented now. Like, if they did it, I feel like with the right person, you could pull it off maybe, but it's just not something that wrestlers would ever think to do this in 2026.
Yeah, I don't think it's a strange one. I think with wrestling having moved on as well, like AEW especially had become accustomed to a more faster paced style of wrestling, and with the pace change, I don't think you can do such a one-sided dominant match. It just wouldn't work. Everything's slowed right down. And if you remember the last time AEW had matches that were slowed down, we all hated it because it was John Moxley doing it on purpose and it was boring.
Yeah, that's a fair point. They have had some one-sided matches, but they're more like they're almost there as a segment as much as anything. You know, I'm thinking Cody Rhodes getting destroyed by Brody Lee or Darby Allin beating MJF. Like, they're very one-sided matches, but they're not. It's not this where it's, like a full match, 13, 14 minutes. They're much more like segments to build something else.
Yeah, and I like this was the culmination of a of the year, essentially, of a long period of storytelling. That not obviously the Flair stuff was moved in after Sid Vicious decided he wanted to stab somebody, but the Vader stuff had been ongoing for a long time. I wonder whether Sid Vicious was ever stated to beat him, or whether that was just going to be another notch on Vader's title. I guess we'll never know, really. Yeah. I'd just be interested to know what the plans were if Flair hadn't stepped in then, because to me, you would have, if he just lost to Sid Vicious, you'd have blown away 7 months of storytelling. It wouldn't have benefited anybody. But the Flair stuff, as we spoke about, it just seemed to hit its peak for that year at that point.
I'm sure if you were willing to wade through hundreds of hours of Conrad Thompson podcasts, you'd probably get both answers. You'd probably get yes and no. So
I'd rather eat my own shit, to be honest.
Let's continue to move along. I'm going to bring up something that I spoke about 2 weeks ago when I was chatting with Floyd about Flair versus Sting. This is something that Tony Khan said. He was asked to name his wrestling Mount Rushmore, and the people that he named was Steve Austin, Sting, Bret Hart, and Ric Flair. And this is what he mentioned about Ric Flair. He said, I also think that Steve Austin and I would agree about this. Any wrestling Mount Rushmore must include the Nature Boy Ric Flair. I think the Nature Boy Ric Flair, to me, is the person I grew up on. My first message board name was Tony Flair, and I'm a big Ric Flair believer. And I absolutely think Ric Flair, to me, growing up, was the person that I followed for the longest time, who I thought wrestled at the highest level. And there are so many incredible Ric Flair matches and moments. So I'm a huge believer in Ric Flair. So this is essentially, Ric Flair is essentially Tony Khan's favorite wrestler. Like, as a child, I think it's fair to say, given what he's said here. And it really got me thinking. And I asked Floyd this last week. I'm not sure if 2 weeks ago. Not sure if you heard his answer, but I'll ask you the same question. Who is AEW's Ric Flair?
It's MJF. It's like it's just in the way, like there's two answers actually. It's MJF in the fact that like he has all of Ric Flair's good qualities and Roddy Piper's, and he has none of Ric Flair's like bad qualities up as far as we can tell. He's copied his in-ring style. He's taken everything that Flair did, and he's also added in, a lot more. He's a modern twist to what Flair does. He does Flair signature spots perfectly. The way he talks, the way his character, it's MJF. But the same, if you look at it from a different point of view, if you look at who is AEW's Flair and who is because like people forget, like Flair was like the workhorse. He was the guy that carried the companies. He was the guy that traveled, as he'll tell anyone who will listen, he was on the road 300 and he's not Hulk Hogan, so he didn't do more days than there is in a year, but he was on the road all year, even if it was a leap year. And the guy, Ironman matches, 50-minute matches, 40-minute matches, night after night, 2 matches in a day, no matter what. So like, if you look at it from that perspective, you wouldn't say MJF because he doesn't wrestle as much. So who would it be in that? I genuinely don't know. Who's maybe...
I think wrestling is different now in that
John Moxley.
MJ, yeah.
Just from that, just from that point of view,
from
like the guy wrestles
every week, but I don't think there's anything else about John Moxley that is like Ric Flair.
No, not at all. I just mean in terms of from the company's kind of like, like standard bearer, the guy that's there every week. He wrestles Collision, Dynamite. He's been promising his wife he's going to have this holiday for fucking 5 years, and he never seems to be off. So
his idea of a holiday is having a 1-hour match.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or having a Texas death match. Oh, I get to use nails in this match. What I was going to say is that I really agree with what you're saying, but I would say the spin on that is that when MJF is around, he is so often the centerpiece of the promotion. Even if he's
Yeah.
not wrestling, he is doing a long promo, or the title scene is booked all around him. Like everyone's chasing MJ. It's all about MJF in the way that like Ric Flair, the shows that he was on were about Ric Flair. And, you know, thinking about this, it's actually in some ways helped me be at peace in terms of understanding why MJF is in that position in AEW, because MJF is not my favorite wrestler. I respect him immensely, and I think he, particularly this year, is having an incredible year. But he is not my guy at all. And there's many people I would put in front of him. But Tony Khan chooses to push him, I think, in front of everyone else, particularly in his generation. Like, I think he gets more spotlight than Hangman, definitely more spotlight than Swerve, definitely more spotlight than Will Ospreay. It's not to say those guys don't get that, but when MJF is around, he gets more spotlight. He gets focus in a way the other guys don't. And so often I'm like, why are you putting so much effort into MJF when you could have done that with Hangman? So, for instance, like the Hangman title reign last year, there was no one that was booked for him. Like, there was no one that was booked for him. And then MJF gets it, and it's like suddenly, oh, there's actually people that are being prepared for him, and his title reign feels important. And what I'm trying to say is that, like, Tony Khan is booking his favorite wrestler. Like, this is the wrestler that he connects with. I've never really connected with Ric Flair. I respect him immensely, but if I look at the wrestlers that I love the most from this era of wrestling, it's Terry Funk, it's Roddy Piper, it's guys who've got a bit more grit and a little less flash about them. But you know what? That's not who Tony Khan likes as a wrestler. And for whatever reason, he likes Ric Flair. And I agree that MJF is probably the closest thing to Ric Flair. And that's exactly what Floyd said last 2 weeks ago as well. I think the only thing I would say is MJF has never, ever put a face performance together like this one that Flair gets.
I think he was getting there, you know. I think like all in 2023, he was getting there for me. You started to see some serious kind of there was a shift, and it's so unfortunate Adam Cole got injured, because I do feel like we would have seen this. There's a real shift in the character he was portraying, in that he went from, you know, I'm going to use this guy, to, oh yeah, I like this guy, but you know, a bit of a to actually, and I feel like it was pushing on to the point where he would have been like a hurt face. And I genuinely feel like there was potential there, and I'd love to see it in the future. But I feel like Adam Cole getting injured, like, you know, kind of unfortunately, obviously, not Adam Cole's fault, but that just threw a spanner in the works of it all, and kind of completely killed the storyline. It really.
We're getting along so well, Andy. And then you had to bring up the brochachos.
Here's another one for you then. Like, this one I just thought of. You were asking me who is the AEW's Ric Flair, and based on what I think we'll probably both have a similar answer for this, and it's not Darby Allin. Who is AEW's Sting? As in the guy that should have been given the baton, should have been the face of the company, but for some reason they never did. He was always like behind somebody else. And I'm leading you there with that, because I think you know.
Well, I talked about this as well 2 weeks ago with Floyd, and it's Hangman Page to me.
100% is, yeah.
Yeah, it's Hangman Page. And even the fact that MJF and Hangman have got this really cool dynamic. I love the Hangman MJF stuff. I think it's really compelling. And I'm curious. So for people listening, we're recording this in June, and you know, MJF is very braggadocious about what's happened with Hangman Page, but he hasn't actually shown up since he lost the ability to ever challenge for the world championship again. I'm so curious about how this is going to play out. And you know, even just the fact that there's like Flair and Sting have this cursed relationship. MJF and Hangman have got this like, so it's like you can't have one without the other, and they're so linked. Yeah, I think it's a really good comparison.
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah, no, it's MJF, and Sting. Sting is definitely Hangman. I really do wish they'd put a bit more behind them, but we'll see what they do. They'll probably lazily bring him back as a heel, and we move on.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I've got enough trust in Hangman. We're talking about this 2 months ahead of him. Maybe he'll be back by the time we do, but I've got enough trust in Hangman and his ability to execute on creative. I'm willing to let it play out, and I'm not going to get mad about it before it happens, even if it means him breaking the stipulation. I'm not going to get angry about them going back on their word until I've seen what it actually looks like when they do, and how it's going to play out. Because yes, in theory, I think wrestling promotions should take their stipulation seriously, but sometimes the only point in having a stipulation is to break it. And in this instance, maybe it will be a really good story. And most of the time when Hangman Page is doing big things, it's really cool and really well done. So I hope this will be the same.
I totally agree. And also, while we're on Ric Flair, speaking of people who break stipulations, the guy, how many times did he retire? Was it like three? 3 times he retired? 4? Whatever. So, yeah, stipulations mean nothing in Ric Flair's world.
He had that match that he nearly died in, and that was marketed as his last match, and then 2 weeks later he was like, "I think I could do another one of those."
Look, to be fair,
I think only Conrad Thompson was like, "Oh, we could make some money out of this."
To be fair, he broke a good few marriage stipulations, didn't he? So I guess he's no stranger to that. Oh, he's a horrible man. I hate it when the guys you used to love are horrible bastards. But whatever.
The other person we've got to ask about is who is Tony Khan's Vader? If we're gonna say, if we're gonna just start asking these questions about everyone.
Well, I really wanted them to push Megan Bain as a Vader in the female division because I thought like when she come in, there was just a lot of hype about it, and like the way she was portrayed as this monster. But they cooled down a lot on that since, so they couldn't really do that. In terms of the men, I don't know. From the male roster, I can't really think of anybody who is like a Vader. There's no one who, to me, is like just a dominant, immovable object.
The guy I think Megan Bain is actually an incredible comparison, and it's probably just my sexist brain not thinking about her to start with. I think that's potentially an incredible comparison. But the guy that I think of is Samoa Joe. Not just because of he isn't booked as dominantly as Vader, absolutely not. But the thing that made me think about it was watching Vader and his taunting and how egotistical and almost like arrogant and self-assured he was, and the swagger that he has in between moves in this match and in other matches as well. And I think Joe is the sort of the big guy that has that, like there's someone like Lance Archer or Brian Cage, and they don't really have that swagger about them, even though they're, big men. They're no wrestler in AEW no big guy wrestler has been booked as dominantly as Vader. And part of that is just Tony Khan doesn't seem to like booking big men in a dominant fashion and doesn't see that as something he wants to do. But
like in modern wrestling, I can't remember it was you that said this actually, but somebody a while ago when talking about Miro said that he was at the perfect territory heel in the wrong era. And
that's something I've said. That's something I've
because
said.
I don't think it works. Because for me, for someone to do what Vader did, they'd have to come in afresh into AEW. You couldn't use someone who's already on the roster because we already know about them. You need someone the fans don't know about. Come in. What the fuck? Who is this guy? What he's destroying everybody. But the problem is once they're beaten, it's done. Like, what do you do with them? And that was always the Miro problem. Like, once he was to lose, what's the point? What's he going to do next? Because there's nothing else. And a lot of the time, these big, characters in that kind of spot don't have much more past them. I mean, like that was Vader's problem, wasn't it? Once he'd started to lose the Vader aura, they didn't really know what to do with him because what do you do with a big guy who loses?
Yeah, it's just that these kind of wrestlers, when they do eventually lose, it strips away more from them than because so much of their presentation is about how dominant they are. And when they're not winning, they're not dominant. So it undercuts their presentation so rapidly. And you really can't have someone in, wrestling contracts these days are like 3 to 5 years, and you can't have someone dominate for 3 to 5 years. It just doesn't work like that. It's too much. And so you can get maybe 6 months out of someone doing nothing but winning, and then people are going to start going, well, we want this person to be beaten, and then when they're beaten, it's like, well, what do we do with him now? He's been beaten, and his presentation gets diminished. But Tony Khan doesn't even seem to want to really give that a go. Like, I think the other guy who he sort of tried a little bit with, but he didn't even give him the big wins, was Brody Lee. Like, ultimately, he got beaten by John Moxley in his first ever feud, and then he did have that moment against Cody, which was incredible, but then was immediately beaten again by Cody. So, even that was very limited in its run. And I think we would have seen if he was continued to wrestle, that he would have probably fallen into the same like category that, say, a Lance Archer or Brian Cage did, where, like, these are guys who came in at different, booked very strongly, but ultimately they were just booked to be an obstacle for the face to overcome. And that was done very quickly. And then it was like, well, what do we do next?
They should have come in while Hangman was champion, because the face doesn't have any obstacles to overcome. So they wouldn't have been thrown to the side.
And Hangman's so good at wrestling big dudes as well.
Oh, man. Don't get it. Honestly, I could talk for 2 days on that. Like, they had no people lined up for him. It was stupid.
Just give him another match with Lance Archer, for God's sake.
We'll give him Hook instead. Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, every single episode of this show turns into an episode about Hangman, I swear.
He's the best baby face on the planet, man.
Oh, also a fantastic heel. Anyway, let's.
He was never a heel. He was never a heel. That's a discussion for another day. He was never a heel. He was Charles Bronson from Death Wish.
Yeah. Andy, I think I've asked all the questions that I wanted to ask. Actually, no, one more. And I think this is an entirely subjective question. And I think you actually answered it in your introduction. But, Flair is eternally in the picture for the question, who was the greatest wrestler ever? Guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin have said he's the greatest wrestler ever. In the greatest wrestler project that happened earlier this year that I submitted a ballot for, he came in 4th behind Kenta Kobashi, Bryan Danielson, and Terry Funk. And he was Flair the GOAT? Is he the greatest ever?
He is for me, but there's a caveat in that, like, you can't really compare wrestlers from different eras in the same way that you can't, a lot of sportsmen, you can't compare from different eras. Everything changes, the game changes. I mean, for me, like, separate, Flair is the GOAT from the kind of 80s, 90s era for me. The post that, it's a toss up between Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega. I would give you a different answer on any other day on that, because like Bryan Danielson is the guy's the best at everything, but Kenny Omega, some of the shit that Kenny Omega does and the emotion that he kind of manages to get me excited and kind of hyped and hooked in to the point where I'm on edge. Like, it's one or the other for modern day, but I wouldn't say there's one overall GOAT, because, like I say, it's changed so much that it depends who you're asking, doesn't it, and what era they're used to, or what era they followed.
The thing I always worry about when I make these sorts of declarations, and I did enter a ballot into that greatest wrestling project ever, but I gave about 1,000 caveats, being like, look, I understand, I don't know everything. I might call something the greatest, but I just haven't watched enough of something else that may be better, that I just haven't seen enough of it. So calling and it's one of the things that irks me about modern, you like, not just even wrestling discourse, but like sporting discourse and stuff. Everyone's the greatest this, the greatest that, the best ever. Like, it's like ever is a long time. and there's been a lot of wrestling that's taken place, and saying like, oh, this is the greatest wrestling match ever. Like, I can say this is my favorite ever. This is the best I've ever seen. This is what I think is the best, but man, to be definitive about it, the more I learn about anything, the more I realize how little I know.
Exactly. I do remember somebody saying that every Wikipedia page should start with, I reckon that. And like, that's the same with these kind of questions. I reckon the Flair's the best. Maybe Terry Funk, one of the two, or post that, it's Bryan Danielson or Kenny Omega. But that's just what I think. Somebody else might think Danhausen's the best wrestler of all time. They will be wrong, but that's their opinion, and they're free to have that.
Well, maybe he's the greatest merch seller of all time. Who knows? We
He
don't
probably
actually know
is, to be fair.
Just ask,
He's a very
ask
rich
the
man.
people that he leaks to, if he's the best merchandise seller of all time. So they say, man, this has been you've caught me on a really I'm like throwing strays everywhere at the media today. I've gone in for Conrad a couple of times. Now I'm going in for the
That's what we do, man. That's right. I do that every week.
Me, Andy.
We just should have got a couple of Bully Ray ones in there, and we would have been sorted.
Yeah, mate, it's been a blast having you on here today. I'll definitely have to have you back at some point, and maybe we can talk about the brochachos. Maybe I've got to do something about that at some point. I've got to cover it because it's such an interesting thing to talk about, but I'm also slightly dreading it as well.
I'll bring my scissors for that one.
Where can the good people find you, and what would you like to plug, my friend?
Yeah, I think it's Twitter, GW Podcast UK. I think it is. Might be wrong. Group Chat Wrestling Podcast. If you search for it on Twitter, YouTube, Blue Sky, we're everywhere. Spotify, the Apple Podcast, like everywhere, wherever there's even Deezer. We're on Deezer, and I don't know anybody that's ever used Deezer.
I don't even know what that thing is, mate. I've never heard of it before. If I was going to make a comparison to the Group Chat Wrestling Podcast for people who listen to Social Suplex, I would say you're like an English version of One Nation Radio. So One Nation Radio is very different to the Group Chat Wrestling Podcast, but you know, the way I've often described you guys, it's like listening to a couple of friends sitting down at the pub and having a yarn, and that's kind of what the vibe I always get from Rich and James. It's like these two friends who are sitting down, no holds barred. They've got strong opinions, very good at articulating them, and that's the vibe I get off you guys. You know, from different cultures, obviously. But I
appreciate that, mate. That's brilliant.
Yeah. No, I really love listening to you guys. I love the passion and I love the energy, and I love that you don't take things too seriously as well. Most of the time. But thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you jumping on today.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having
me. And suggesting this match. It was a fantastic one to watch back. As we've said throughout, if you haven't seen this match, it's well worth checking out. And it's not a match that takes a long time to watch as well. It's not going to, we're not going to be taking a massive chunk out of your day if you go back and watch it. The actual match, I think, is about 13, 14 minutes, and you can knock over the promos as well. And it's well worth having a look at if you've never seen it before, because it is a really fantastic performance from Flair and Vader in particular. Thank you for listening, though. It's been fun to go back, and we've got more coming up. Next week is going to be, 2 weeks' time is going to be a really interesting one. In the build-up to All In, I'm actually going to be going back and looking at the original All In from 2018. We're going to be looking at the whole show. So that will be a really fun one. And it's probably one that I reckon is worth re-watching beforehand, so that when we discuss, we're not going to be able to go into things quite as in-depth as we always do, because, that's a 4-hour show, and we're going to be discussing the whole show. But it's going to be an interesting retrospective to do. So All In 2018 will be what we're going to be looking at in 2 weeks' time. If you have enjoyed the show today, you can also like and subscribe, review it on your podcast app of choice. You can subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. We, of course, have 2 feeds for it. There's the AEW Match Guide feed, which is just the AEW Match Guide, and the Social Suplex Network feed, which has all of the shows for the Social Suplex Network. I've listened to everything through that one because I love all of our shows and I listen to all of our shows. And if you want to find me, you can find the best place to do so is the Social Suplex Discord. Really great place to talk about all things wrestling. And, you can talk about, I often like talking about cooking in it as well. That's just me. Some people like talking about sport, movies, music, all different things that you can find in there. And it's filled with interesting people. And we've got a strict no dickheads policy, which, sorry, Andy, that means you're not part of it. And I'm looking forward to catching up with everyone again in 2 weeks' time, where, as I said, we're going to be looking at All In 2018. Andy, thanks again for jumping on today. And thank you to everyone out there listening. I'll see you in a fortnight's time. Bye. Thank Thanks for listening to the AEW Match Guide podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then you can subscribe on the podcast app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to let me know on Twitter at Sir_Samuel. I'd love to hear from you. The AEW Match Guide podcast is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where you can find many other fantastic podcasts discussing not just AEW, but all parts of the world of professional wrestling. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Sam Brown.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.